Hello and warm welcome the audience to New Generation Women, and I'm Janine van Zenos. The World Economic Forum predicts that it will take 202 years for women to achieve economic gender parity. Dalai Lama made it clear in an interview and said, please give women leadership roles and please women accept them. One of his famous quotes is, the world will be saved by the Western woman. Today's topic is feminine female leaders in strong leadership positions. I had just an amazing interview with three very impressive guests. Three leaders who are working at the German company Siemens. Our guests today are Nandani Linton. She's Chief Transformation Officer for Gas and Power Services. Nadja Håkansson. She's a Regional Director Africa for Gas and Power Services. And Gina Varjo-Breuer. She's Global Head of HR for Gas and Power. Hello and warm welcome from Munich to Orlando and Casablanca. So I just saw a statement of Simon Sinek in a speech where he said, we don't need more female leaders. We need more leaders who act as females, and women need to get better at that. And I had to smile when he said this because, you know, I said on purpose, feminine female leaders in strong leadership positions. Nandani, when you hear this statement of Simon Sinek, he is one of the British and American very known authors and leadership experts. We don't need more female leaders. We need more leaders who act as females, and women have to get better at that. What do you feel, or what do you think when he says this?
Well, I must say it makes me smile, Janine,
yes,
because two reasons. One is I think we all know the women who've felt that they had to kind of turn into men in a skirt, if you will, in order to get ahead. And there are cultures that do that. At the same time, I'm smiling because I'm currently surrounded, in this webcast and at work, by women who are being really women. And finally, wow, you know, the best male leaders are the ones who also show that empathy and caring that is traditionally associated with women.
What do you think, Gina?
Yeah, I have the same reaction as Nandani, actually. I also make me smile. And I also get quite often that question, how challenging is it to be a woman surrounded by strong men? And I always say, you know, I just try to be authentic and be a female and show also the attributes of a female. To be connected, to be vulnerable, to be empathetic. And this is how you connect also to the people around you. And I will also say, same as Nandani, I think the men who also show these kind of traits are very successful, and they create a lot of followership also in the organization.
And Nadja, asking you, you come from Bangkok, you're now in Casablanca, you were raised and born in Stockholm. You have seen quite a few styles of leadership also yourself.
Yes, indeed I have. And I echo what Nandani and Gina say. And, you know, I don't know any other way to be. I'm just myself. And as a woman, I feel, of course, feminine. And, you know, I wouldn't imagine being in any different way to fit into a certain way, stereotype on how to be a leader. So I'm just being myself.
I mean, I invited you for a reason when I said feminine female leaders, because this is what I also, and you know this, Nadja, we have spoken about this a couple of times, that I said, wow, there are women in leadership positions who are different, who are more feminine than I usually do see in companies. But it's not long ago that I've worked with women who've been very male oriented. And it was much, much easier for me to work with men compared to working with women, because they've been very pressured and tough. And I know one of the board of directors is known in Germany, and he said later after the meeting, well, thank you for the courage you brought in, Janine. And I thought, well, you don't know with whom I've been working before. And these were female leaders from a very large company. And I thought, I've been trained on the tough way. So it still seems to be a topic that women are asking, playing very, or transforming and acting very masculine. What do you see when, Gina, you're nodding your head? What do you see in your environment and when you take women on board and you see this is happening?
Yeah, that's a good question, what I'm doing. first of all, I try to role model to be myself, to be feminine, but in a professional way. I think this is important. Also, not to underline always this gender difference. So it has to become natural that you have, different genders in the room and in leadership positions. And I also try to, go into transformational dialogues with females when I can observe that they are too harsh or very masculine. Because when they easen up, they're much more natural, they're much more powerful, they're much more inspirational. When you don't show that this kind of strict behavior and this very aggressive behavior. So I try to enter into transformational dialogues and try to role model the way that you can also be strong and also respected by not behaving like a man.
Nanani, did you ever have the experience that at one point you learned, oh, maybe I came across too strong? Because I had that. I worked with the board of director, and it was one of the only things where I really felt I'm going into aggressiveness. I was so disappointed that they didn't integrate what they had been talking about before. So my reaction was way more aggressive or way more pushy than I usually am. But that was my reaction of, you must be kidding. That's not what you're going to do after you have said this and this. And they were very cross with me. It took a year or 2 years to repair that. And this was a painful learning, but I said, never ever do this again. Stay firm, determined, stay charming, and stay smart in this. So that was my learning, where I totally overreacted. Did you ever catch yourself where you felt, go back, now you might become too pushy in this sense?
I've had a slightly different experience. People tell me that I'm pretty good at being pushy with velvet gloves on. But there's two things. One was there are a few years where I heard from colleagues, but also I was in a couple of communications classes where they all said, smile more. Why do you get more strict when you're suddenly either practicing or actually, speaking to a group that's really important to convince, right? So it's like, I don't go pushy, I go stiff. And I think I've partly learned that. I'm sure I still fall into it sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing I have to be careful of is I've become aware that I have a huge trigger. And that is when I'm, with a group that's above me in the hierarchy and really feel very strongly about something I'm presenting, if I feel that there's no respect there. Mm-hmm. For a topic that's about humans, that's about doing good for their own employees, just asking to be heard, then I really have to control myself.
Yes, you worded perfectly. Triggers. I think those are also my triggers. And I have to really contain myself. Don't jump on them. And my emotional reaction can be impulsive. It can be, pushy. And to stay with myself and stay very firm and clear while, not get emotional about that. So I understand that. Nadja, I know you mostly kind and gentle and a good listener and always bring people together, asking, putting yourself, not last, but putting yourself not front and not showing off, but trying to embrace and integrate everybody. And when we had one of our first talk shows where we met, you said in the end, and I took this for a trailer we did out of this interview, and you said, what really it's not triggering, you said somehow, what is important to me is take ownership. Don't just write emails, take your phone, call the person wherever the person is, and don't ask for permission. So it was a very firm sentence. It was a very strong sentence. I said, yeah, that's not you on the other side. So what are your triggers when you feel I need to watch my emotional reaction that I don't, jump over?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we all as humans have been in that place where we've reacted in a way where afterwards we feel this was not, who I want to be. I think that's very human to, in certain situations, these trigger points overreact. I think if that happens, when that happens, I think, you have to take that as a sort of a lessons learned and just, look into yourself and not try to understand why, and be aware of those situations and not just, sweep it under the rug, but try to, acknowledge that happened and develop, because no one is perfect. We will all be in situations where we react in a way which is not really true to who we want to be. And yeah, I think it's quite human.
Do you see, I mean, if we look back, and Michelle Obama gets really popular at the moment, and I think because she's so honest, she's just in America taken the heart of people in her honesty and her humor, and that really suits her well. Another one is Brené Brown, also very outspoken in America because of her humor, her charms, her honesty. And I'm always, if you know me, it's really the power of honesty that I'm supporting and valuing. Everything else gets so boring, it doesn't really move forward. So it's an honesty that connects us. And I still see, if a woman gets, pushy or firm or determined, and successful, there is still a kind of a slight way you don't have to defend yourself, but you have to walk yourself tall and always balance it out. I just recently had a woman, and she's a coach, and we were talking, and I don't know if I was complaining. I think I was complaining about something. And she said, it was just 2 weeks ago, and she said to me, Janine, the way how you come across, and I had some hot pants on, but just normal. It was just not, she said, the way you come across is that women are trying to, they feel afraid that you take on some kind of a role, and men are afraid of you. So I still know, as a coach, I still know that gender behind it. And I felt, whoa, now I needed to work on myself for all that time to become strong and independent and master skills. And then I have in the beginning, so not push everybody away, I have to make myself smaller so I can fit in again. And I still see those pictures happening. You are laughing, Nandini. What is your experience in that? I still struggle with this one, as you can tell.
Well, it is, isn't it? I had this image of making oneself smaller. I keep remembering when I was in university, and I actually lied about getting very good grades, because whether they were men or women, the people I was just hanging out with to play, they would have found it very strange. I would have been an outsider for being disciplined and smart, right? And in the workplace now, people assume that you're disciplined and smart, or you wouldn't get to a management position, to a leadership position. So it's not hiding that so much, but there is something still about being willing to sometimes seem small. And it's hard. It's a little like Alice in Wonderland, right? Now you're to be big. Now you're to be small, right? So what does it take? That's why I was smiling.
Yes. And I also, there's one core that you have, and that seems that you need to know that core of who you are. So that core is, don't touch that core, but then you are more flexible in different surroundings. So I'm very different I'm a little bit different in a corporate surrounding than maybe in another surrounding. So here I try to be flexible. I say I'm flexible, but I'm never touching that core. Gina, what is your experience? Now, you had a huge promotion last year, and you've been promoted quite a lot over the last years. Do you feel, how does it feel for you? Do you grow in those roles quickly, or do you feel that you have to get used to that? Do you feel that you change accordingly, or have you changed? Have other people said this?
Yes, I mean, I always say we all grow together. When you're stepping into a new role, you have, of course, to reflect on yourself. What is it, what you can cover already? What is it where you have to learn and grow? I think that humbleness is very important when you're stepping into these roles. If you say you know it all, I think this is actually where you fail. You have to say, I would like to learn it all. And this is the attitude I'm having. I work very closely with coaches because you have to grow your personality. Otherwise, you're not able to fill that. And as Nadja said, we are all not perfect. And also this new role now is very large. And suddenly I'm responsible for 700 people in the HR arena and for 88,000 people for Siemens Energy going forward. This is a huge responsibility. And then you also have to ask yourself, okay, what do you have to do in order to connect and inspire these people? Yeah? And leading also via 4 or 5 layers is now different than what I did before. So how do you create that impact, and how do you create that strong connection? Because for me, it's super important to have this, personal relationship, and that people really connect also with us as an organization, with our purpose. with my vision also for HR. And for that, yes, definitely you have to grow. And at the same time, you also have to find your inner access. This is what you described quite well. I can relate with that very well because I think I'm someone, I have my inner access. I know who I am. I know what I want. I have a very clear vision. And that helps me actually to be centered. But as I said, but I'm humble enough to say, okay, and I have to expand myself.
Mm-hmm. Natya, your purpose is to support women in leadership roles. That was what you said last year, that you really want to support women. What are the qualities of a female leaders that you could say these are kind of role model qualities? Because when we grew up, I think in our generation, we didn't have a lot of female role models. It was really learning by doing, and we had to figure out ourselves what kind of qualities would work and how we could role model others and what we could give away to teenage girls and young women, which I really love always to teach young women to do it better or to give away my learnings. What is it for you? What are the core qualities for a female leader?
Well, for me, it's about sort of the ability to be able to connect with people and that people feel like they can be themselves with you as a leader. That you as a leader, you're comfortable in your own skin and your ability, and that comes through in your interaction with people. And I think that to me is key, that you can build that connection quite quickly.
And Nandini, because you are very impressive women, and when I read your background, it's like, oh, wow, that's kind of a lot. So this impression of being intimidate people, let's say this way, you come up, you try to be connecting, as Natya said, you want to have people being themselves. But also they're intimidated by the background you're in, and they're intimidated maybe by your position. And we all know it's still a case that it's very, very hard for people in businesses to speak truth. It's very hard for people in businesses to have an eye-height level conversation when they're in different roles. So how do you make sure or try to make it as gentle as possible that people, when they meet with you, or then when you inspire a meeting, that they are as relaxed as possible, as honest as possible, as much themselves as possible, knowing that they're not always that way?
I have to say, I think I'm lucky that it comes pretty naturally to me. I think because I grew up in so many different cultures and have worked in different cultures, and I've always loved to go to the coal face. I when I worked for Maersk, the highlight of the whole thing for me was not taking the executives to Harvard. It was actually going and working on the offshore oil rig. When I was a consultant, my favorite thing to do was to go into the factories, because I might get in trouble, but I always say that's where the real work happens, and in that way, maybe I'm blind to this, but I think that I'm usually not intimidating. Once a new client called me and said, you know what, I'm calling you because you were referred to me because my friend's secretary told my secretary that you were always so approachable for her too. And I hadn't done it on purpose, but I have this deep belief in the inner dignity and value of every human being. So I hope that comes across.
I remember we had the, not kitchen table wisdom, but a kitchen table talk before we went into, you remember that? And we met you there and we saw you first time face to face there. And it was such a sweet conversation. We all just met coincidentally in the kitchen, apart one of the CEOs. And it was such a heartwarming conversation. And that was exactly what it needed, so that we had this kind of relaxed open talk show that we had afterwards. And we got to know you from a very human, a very sweet, very charming way. What are you doing in your position now you're in, Gina, when it comes to keeping the round as open as possible, having people open up to take ownership, talk their truth. And as again, I have to really say it over and over again, it is still work to do in businesses. It's still happening. People are still afraid to talk truth. What are you doing to make it as relaxed and eye-height level as possible?
I have a very open communication style. So I tend to also share openly what I think. I share openly how I assess certain situations. And then I also mention things that are on the mind of people around me, but they don't dare to speak up because they think, oh, it's not appropriate to say. And when I start that conversation, you know, I try to share that and then say, oh, she's talking about that. So then, you know, you can see that they are more brave, and then they're also sharing more, and suddenly you're in the conversation. And I also encourage them. And this is also something when they say something or do something that is not usual, right? I always say, oh, I call it out in a positive way, and I always say, oh, this is fantastic that you do that. I'm really proud of you that you have spoken up, or I'm really proud that you bring the topic into the round. So this is the way I try to really encourage the teams around me, that they're opening up and be authentic and open if possible.
And I like that so much. And I don't want to say is this a female way of approaching it, because I know men, and we all know them, who are very conscious. I think just a new consciousness of approaching leadership. And Simon Sinek said in the same speech, you know, we are talking about hard and soft skills, and he doesn't like soft skills. He said it's hard and human skills. So raising human consciousness is for both equal important, but we are in a male system, and we are more in a young oriented system. So bringing in compassion and understanding and emotional qualities and intuition into the game is just a yin quality. It's on both sides, but women are a little bit more natural to it than usually men when they do have more yin qualities. And my question is to you, so how do you now in this impactful job try to create a balance? It's not about just yang, it's not about just yin. And I want to name another very well-known spiritual teacher. His name is Eckhart Tolle. He said, you know, if you look into countries such as Germany, there has been extremes. It has been extremely young-oriented, extremely authority-oriented, and now it's very yin-oriented, very compassionate, and no boundaries at all. And, you know, it's something going into back and forth, and both are going into extremes, and both are not leading to success. So it's about the balance of both. Nadja, what are you doing, and what do you try to do in Casablanca, coming with your vision and purpose to leadership and how you want to lead? What do you try to implement that there's a more balanced style of leadership, a collaborative style of leadership of women and men?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think the collaboration and the interaction between people, I think, is something that I really believe is profound, the key to develop businesses. And actually one thing that just in general surprises me, not just here in Casablanca, but in other interactions, is that item, which to me is very obvious, doesn't come natural for everyone. So I think what I see sometimes my role is to be that glue that puts people together, that you know, either that I have an advice and I know how to connect people, so that people sometimes need to get a little bit forced into collaboration because it's not natural. You know, if you're used to being just an individual contributor and doesn't really like to interact or get advice or get feedback or work in teams, personally, I don't think that we can really develop businesses in an efficient way, in a quick way forward, if we don't interact with each other. So in those cases, I think I can, as a leader here, I can be that person who connects people and be that glue.
If I can jump in, Janine, yes. I'd just like to say what Nadia's mentioning about collaboration, also in a sense talking about some people who are more comfortable with it than others. I would just like to step back and say it's also the structures. I see part of my role, and actually all of our roles, as saying how can we help people get away from having been taught to maximize their own, meeting their own targets or their own silos targets, right? How can we actually help people grow into that view of My job is to be responsible for the whole, because that's where we get the growth, right? But in our older systems, and it's not just our company, as you said, it's a more yang kind of way of thinking, that we draw lines and separate and differentiate, instead of bringing people together. But that's not going to work going forward.
Gina, what is for you? How do you, I mean, when we go back to your journey, it must have been quite a journey to come where you are today. And it's, I'm sure that you didn't have, you know, male colleagues and male leaders who were always understanding and supportive in the way what you were seeing. There must have been ways where you were struggling and were in conflict, and where you might have seen very old ways of thinking, or very young oriented styles of thinking that have been outlived also for companies, but it was still, you know, in the tradition. How did you break through to make your voice heard and make it in a charming way that your voice matters as much as the voices of colleagues?
I have to smile. As a person, I'm very persistent.
Endurance, yes. I think endurance is one of the biggest qualities and biggest gifts we have, yes.
So I have that attitude, you know, I never give up, and no is never a no for me. And if you throw me out through the front door, I come to the back door, and I always try to connect and try to make the point. So sometimes, you know, it's also, I learned not to say, okay, oh, it has to be like that, and to be pushy what we had at the beginning. That's something I had to learn, because I was quite pushy, because I'm very result oriented as well. So things didn't go the direction I wanted to be. That was my trigger. So I had to learn how to be patient with me and my surrounding. It's not always successful, but I try that this will work out. And I think that patience, but never losing out of sight where you want to go, this is helping me. And I also using strategic influencing, if I may use that word, because it's sometimes you're more successful when you go indirect with your messages and not so much directly, and they say, okay, and I speak to that person and then you have to act like that. So I try to create a helpful network around me, and that plays different messages around me, so that they travel, you know, to the persons who are actually have to make the decisions. And I also speak up in meetings, and I have one-on-ones, I do informal settings, so I also try to have informal dialogues. So I have a couple of strategies where I try, you know, to make the point, and to be actually convincing at the end, and moving into the direction I want to do. So
were your colleagues sometimes really irritated, like, oh, there she again? And could you see that sometimes in their faces, like, I hope she just doesn't. And you see it, I see this too, of course. And I learned to be very charming. And one of my biggest assets, and I don't know how you say, I always take in humor. Humor, and I really mean that. So humor was always my best weapon, in quotes. And I would absolutely know what they were thinking. And that was not pro-Janine at all. So I would speak out loud what they were thinking, but then I would make it humorous. And I would extremely take the wind out of their sails. So how are you dealing when you see in their faces, and we know that, you say something, you're very convinced about it. You maybe don't have the results yet. You don't have anything in numbers, but you just from the intuition, you know it's the right thing to do. And you see already the faces that starts to cramp up a little bit, because it's still an old way of thinking that we need that first. How do you stay persistent, Gina? Because you said you're persistent, the door is closed, you come in the back door again. What is your kind of recipe for other women when they're just starting to get into leadership roles? And what can they learn from you?
Yeah, I think it's this don't give up attitude. It's really going back and connecting and deliver the message. And sometimes, you know, there are situations where it's the right point in time where you can bring across the message again. So you also have to wait that the right context is coming up, and then you just bring it again. So it's not that you're permanently talking about it, because this is then annoying to your environment, yes. Right? So you also have to learn to keep it for yourself. So what I try is I observe, you know, and then when I see, oh, there is an opportunity, and then I'll go in. So this is really like saying, where's the hook and where can I click to it. So this is how I try to do it.
No, I think it's so it's timing. It's really about timing, and it's patience and timing and intuition. And Natya, I also want to ask you, and I have a really beautiful little story to tell, because I was leading a very big event with my partner, and there were 150 people. And my partner is the structured one, the analytical one, and everybody loves him because he really gets the people where they stand. I'm more the exotic one, the crazy one, but somehow she's different. So somehow she makes sense. So somehow maybe we might need her, or we might, somehow out of the box, that's nice. But together it really matches. And we had in this afternoon of this event, the energy went down. I could feel that. And I went to him and said, look, we have to totally skip the whole program for the afternoon. We have to be intuitive, spontaneously reacting to what is happening right now. And I could see in his eyes, I wasn't afraid, but I was tense too, because I wanted to just put the program away and be really in the moment, present to the moment, what was happening right there. And I could see his eyes going like this, oh my God. And I looked and I grabbed him by his shoulders. The others were for coffee. I said, trust me on this, trust me. I intuitively feel this is the right thing to do. So poor man, he skips it. He says, as he is told in quotes, and it went really well. We totally did the whole afternoon, few hours by intuition, never knowing what is coming next. Always in the moment, in the present moment of feeling into the people where they are standing, and then bring that together. And it was a huge success, but we were drained, of course, afterwards. And it would have never happened if we wouldn't have both played together. And he would have allowed me to be intuitive, allowed me to be my crazy creative self, and to listen to the people and dive into that. If I would have stuck to the structure and to how it's supposed to go, it would have been okay. But it wouldn't have moved the energy we needed to be moved forward. You, as a very intuitive woman, how do you deal with your intuition, and also that you have the space to be able to act on it?
Well, for me, when I'm in a meeting room or I'm engaging with people, I am very connected to the energy. I feel immediately the people around me and how to connect with them. And I've always had as an approach, whether it's a development project, or a meeting where I want to convey my message, my direction, my proposal, that I prepare quite a lot. I think, what is my vision, my mission, my target, and how do I get there? So, and I'm quite prepared by speaking with people and getting the different views from people before I make my own view. But I think it's super important to be able to be convincing in your messages. You need to sort of feel the space and feel where people are, and if people connect to your ideas or not, and be able to adapt in those situations.
Talking about, again, the balance, and talking about your own balance, and being intuitive leaders and being visionaries and pioneers, that doesn't come with MBA, that doesn't come with university degrees, that comes from life, that comes from being very much connected to yourself. And I always say there is an entelechy, that is a knowing. It's a Latin expression, that's the art and the nature of becoming. Like, if you get a baby, you don't have to look into the belly all the time, how the baby grows. So there is a force of nature that has an intelligence. And when we are in intellectual oriented businesses or in professions, we tend to be very intellectual. We tend to forget that we have a lot of other intelligence that also grows a business, that brings people together. But for me, I do my spiritual practice every day. I take 1 hour apart, and it takes a lot of discipline in order to bring that in order to have that strength and intuition. So bring that in when days are hectic and more intellectually driven. Gina, how are you creating a space for resilience, a space for balance, a space where you have playtime? It sounds almost ridiculous, and looking at your promotions, it must be really almost like playtime, but there must be a way how you regenerate your body and your mind and clear your mind in order to be more in the moment, reactive to what is needed, and clear your mind from the daily businesses?
Yeah, I'm very honest here. So the resiliency piece is a challenging one for me, because I'm always on 24/7. It's very difficult to disconnect. And yet it's on my agenda, of course, and I try to take the space. So there are two pieces. I always try at least to shut down one day a week. So on a Saturday, normally I always say, okay, I need that space for myself. And then either I'm at home or just do stuff I love, going to the spa, go shopping, reading, be with myself. So this is actually what I really, really like. And this is what I also need, because the way I charge energy is actually, making a step backward and more inward looking. So I have to go inwards for one day so that I'm able also to give energy out. So one day in the week, this is my energy source. And then I also have a very great circle of friends and a support network where I have very good conversations. So that gives me energy, because I'm surrounded by people who think, maybe in different ways, who stimulate me also to make me think about certain aspects. And this is also a way where I can reflect and say, okay, take a step forward, and that was great input. But to say, okay, I take myself for meditation or yoga, or that I say, okay, also during the day, I'm able to really put in some breaks. This is very challenging, to be very honest.
I totally understand. It's a struggle for everybody. Like, how do I set boundaries? How do I set priorities? And how do I have the discipline? I'm so disciplined at business. So that's what women usually say. But when they come home, the discipline just ends there, and they don't have the discipline then in their private lives to integrate that. And of course, we're human beings. We cannot be on the go all the time. I'm asking specifically playtime, because it becomes for females in careers and strong professional positions, they never mention playtime. Like when I was with two male leaders, they would talk about playtime so organically, and they would laugh about it, and they had same gaming, and I would say, oh yeah, I've playtime too, but then they would really play games. The most ridiculous, most horrible gaming you can ever think of, and then they would send that, and say, oh Janine, look at this one, and they would laugh their head off, and they would become really childish and children, and I was sitting there, and I wanted to say, I'm meditating, I'm doing this and this, but I never would take out a Game Boy and just, be so childish about that. So Nandini, you're smiling. What is your playtime during your week and during your month in order to regenerate?
So I am smiling because like Gina, I find it difficult. I also find that it goes back and forth. I'll get into a rhythm where I'm being great. I get up every morning earlier, and I do some spiritual practice, or I make sure that, I go out for a walk because I know it's good for me. And then something happens and there's a stressful period and I just can't keep it up and I fall off the balance again, right? I always think of it like a bicycle. It's going, I fall over, right? Got to get up and get on again. But playtime is a topic that's been coming up for me more and more in the last year or so. And honestly, I'm also lucky. I have godchildren that I now actually look for a way to go and play with them. Yeah. So I actually use children as an excuse sometimes. And sometimes I find I come with all these playful ideas and, oh, let's cut this out and glue that, or let's go in the woods and make this. And they look at me and I'm like, well, I don't want to do that, right? I want to play with my Game Boy. So I notice it.
Yes, that comes from dedication and passion. I have the same with the girls of my partner, and I always want to edutain them and educate and give something further. And they want to show me Kim Kardashians and all that horrible stuff. And I just always think like, I'm done with that. But I really literally use playtime when I do events or work with sport and directors and work with teams. I literally use playtime to bring people together and connect them. And it has worked wonder. It is so important, and sometimes I have to justify it, and I always say, don't ask for my agenda, you don't want to hear it. Just trust me that this is going to be successful, because I would do really and not silly, but playtime. And board of directors are totally open to that once they're into it. And it would hook people right away, bring teams together. Now we are talking about kids. You have kids, Natya. And asking about your balance, you said the secret to balance is that there is no balance, which I found really nice. And normally people say, or women say, you know, when I come home, I have balance because my limit is my kids are demanding and asking about mommy. So I have to drop my business. But then when I come to business, I have to drop my kids again. So I have to be very focused. It actually helps me for balance. So what has been your, I think it must have been a real struggle to balance kids being in two different countries, schooling them again in a different country, having a leadership role. How did you manage?
My husband, I guess, is part of the secret of that. I have a great husband who's a great father, and most likely, you know, I most likely wouldn't be able to do what I do with two children if it wasn't for that support system and having a great husband who is a great dad. But you know, I like to say, when people ask about that balance, that there is no balance, and it's just a foolish pursuit that stresses people out, because they think that they can in a week have the ability to go work out, for healthy, and travel long distances and do long meetings and be a perfect mom and a perfect wife. And truth is, it doesn't exist. And you go through phases where you simply, your balance is focusing on your work, and sometimes you just have to shut that off. And for me, it's about, you know, taking really holiday, leaving the country, doing vacations to be able to shut up from work and focus on my kids and my family. But it is a struggle. You cannot deny it. For me, you know, a simple everyday thing is my mornings are super important. For me, it's really important that I have slow mornings. So I prefer to get up 2 hours before I go to work, just to really take it easy and not stress through breakfast and getting ready. So the mornings are sort of holy for me.
That's what I hear with so many people when they do have more stressful careers, that the mornings is so, you know, you start a slow morning. I try not to have any news on. I even try to behave, and I'm really learning that. Don't put your iPhone on, don't look at your text messages, don't check your emails. But there are days when I just do it, and there are days when I'm off again. I do like meditation and just center myself, and then I start the day. But it's like an everyday practice. Talking about the impact you have in the future, on also how you bring balance into the workplace, how you bring balance into a very stressful, intense time, and has never been so intense with opportunities. I mean, it goes so quick, and at the same time also with having a more balanced mindset. And I heard that one of the biggest gifts and skills you always must have in our generation, I mean, before 30, it's much easier, but for plus 30 people, having a balanced mindset and be flexible in your minds is one of the most important things for being leaders today. Nandini, you said in one of your speeches, you thought first it is like a weakness. You have been raised in India. You came then to have studied in the US. You have lived in different countries. You have also lived in Germany. You're living, it's your hometown. And then you worked in China. You have lived there. And you thought first it's your weakness, and then it became your strength because you have been exposed to so many different countries and cultures. And you try literally to put people out of the box, to expose them. And I think that is so, I love that statement, because to be flexible is what I'm struggling with very often when I'm in businesses. And when they talk about mindset shift, they literally think with some emails, it's done. And mindset shift is a hard work. Transformation in the mind and changing inside out is one of the biggest parts in order to achieve transformation in businesses. So how do you achieve that? And what is your values and your takeaways when it comes to being a leader of impact and a female leader of impact?
That's a lot of questions.
Yes, I know I can.
and I'll try to answer.
I help you. Yes.
But you've spoken to something that's incredibly important to me, because I do believe that every one of us, yeah, organizations anyway, but every one of us is facing a world that gets more and more complex. And we are never going to solve the multitude of real challenges we have as humans, much less as business people, if we do not expand our ability to comprehend complexity. Yeah, I'm a real believer in Robert Keegan's developmental stages. Adults can continue to develop and therefore we use immunity to change maps in the organization. I've used them privately for years. I usually have 3 going at once to challenge myself to always be looking at what are my assumptions? How can I test them? Maybe they were true when they started, they probably were, but I may have outgrown them, or the world may now be different, but I've never questioned my base beliefs. And as a process for taking people through it, this is one of the best ways to get people to build much more adaptive mindsets. That's why that old video, it's funny you watched it, about exposing people, yeah? So put leaders in new situations, take people out on learning expeditions to see organizations that they've never seen before. It literally makes them grow new synapses and makes their own brain, our brains, more complex, and that helps us deal with complexity. So I think, yeah, the values, I have a deep value around reaching our full human potential. As organizations also reaching the full potential of our humans, because organizations are just made up of people. And as I said earlier, something around respecting that, valuing those differences and seeing how do we bring them together to reach our potential together, and thereby hopefully being adaptive enough to solve these huge issues that face us all.
Now we're in a very transformative time, and I don't know if I'm really asking this openly, if this is a curse and a bliss. If I see businesses compared to other professions, there is a safety net, there is a safety. And we know when it comes to change, and you talked about it, Gina, also, people do resist human nature. We do resist change. We want to have change. We want to have everything different. But when we change, we're talking about approaching our fears. We're talking about approaching us. We're talking about approaching our blockages. And that's not comfortable. And it can take a long time unless we have to. And if we have to, it has our undivided attention. And things suddenly start to change much quicker. Now, when it comes to businesses, if there is a lot of safety and we keep employees safe and we want to not overextend them, there's also this safety net behind that is actually taking away a little from the catalyst of having to move forward to move us to the hard stuff, because nobody will do it free will. So how are you in this complexity of, we are in a transformative time. We have to change, but still we have to keep our employees, our leaders safe. They need to feel safe so that they're not completely overextending in their minds. And still we need some kind of uncertainty and unknowingness for moving forward. How do you manage? Oh, now she's gone. Oh, Gina, now you're back. Suddenly you were gone. This important question. Okay, yes.
Oh, it is an important question, and actually I'm very happy to have Nandani at my side, that I don't have to answer that question by myself. We've been trying for many years side by side. I think what is important that you take away the fear of change. I think this is what we're trying to achieve, and by saying, hey, you can't stop it anyhow. But what we can do is we can try to help you to understand how you can play a more important role in it. And maybe in your own area of responsibility, you also have a chance to impact it and to start small steps. Yeah. And then this gives people psychologically the feeling, oh, maybe I can control it a little bit, because in my little area, I can start change. Yeah, so I think this is what we're trying to really build, that adaptive muscle in the organization, and working with smaller teams, larger teams across all hierarchies, and give them the equipment and also the confidence to say, I can play a role in the change, and I don't have to be reactive. I can play a very proactive role in it, and equip them with the know-how, because it's also some insight. And Nandani, you can also maybe add to that afterwards. I think people sometimes just don't know how to address change. It's not that they're always saying, I don't want to change. Sometimes they just simply don't know how to do it. And this is what we are trying, to involve people, to be there, to help them, and to build platforms where we can also give that knowledge and that confidence and encouragement. So this is actually what we are trying to do.
Nandini, would you like to add?
Absolutely. And what Gino said is so important, to help people see that within their range of influence, they can actually define what they think the next steps need to be. If there's a vision of where to go to, and if they decide what has to be done, then nobody's going to resist their own idea, So to me, both giving them the way to define it and also to put people throughout the organization into the role of taking their colleagues along is very different from actually having them be told by some guy on top what they should do, right? People don't like change if they're told to change. They're quite happy for it if they can decide it themselves.
And they see it themselves. I think what is very important from the observation and from my work is to take a little bit more self-evident, to don't make a big fuss, but saying, this is happening for all of us. And we're in a time frame where it's just organically and evolutionary emerging. And we can fight it, and that makes us suffering, or we can go with it and learn to it and also be a player in that and be active in that. And that to me is this kind of self-evident way. And I'm also, if I'm facing change or I'm facing big challenges, I know now how to deal with it. It's really how you approach it from the mindset. And it's amazing what you can do with approaching it from a healthier, stronger mindset that is saying, actually, I'm so much stronger than I think I am. I can take so much more ownership than I think I am. And I still see this mechanism that and Nadja, maybe you like to say something about it. There's still this a little bit, I'm behaving like a child. So yes, businesses would love to have ownership. Ownership means I'm acting as a healthy adult. I'm showing up as an adult in the meeting. But then we tend to go back and act like children if there is a leader and if their employees and that is still the case. So it's going better, but you still have to remind people, don't ask, just take on the role of an adult. You are an adult, actually. You don't have to go in a childish position. And it costs work and costs people to strengthen that one. What is your experience?
I think, all humans want to influence their own destiny. I think that's part of us being humans, or that we don't want to be in a situation where we don't feel like we have a power of our own lives or of our own destinies. And I think that's why the fear of change lies therein, that you fear that you're losing that power of your own destiny. And either you see that as, okay, now I want to influence my destiny, I want to be part of this change journey, or you like you exemplify, you react as a child, or you react in a negative way and are not yourself in a meeting, or whatever way it transpires. So I think when it comes to change management, what us as leaders need to do is connect with people's personal why. What's in it for me is what everyone is asking themselves. So you need to find that intrinsic motivation, and either you find it and you want to be part of it, or you don't find it and you figure that you want to do something different with your life. But you need that personal why to be part of the game, part of the change, part of the business, whatever context it is.
Absolutely. I always like to say this with the personal why, or with the why. When people struggle with what is my why, if you have a catastrophe happening, something happens in nature, like with Australia, everybody has one purpose, everybody has one why. We are all helping, and we are totally out of our own ways. You know, it's not about how do I come across and this and what is in there for me. It's just about everybody comes together and is helping and is supporting. And nobody's asking her or himself, am I good enough? Can I deal with that? Do I have enough skills? Is this perfect enough? Do I have enough information? Did I ask Nandani for permission? Or shall we just, you know, sit together again? It's just, we are right there right now. And this immediacy of action, I think that is something that we can all learn from this. What is coming to a closure, because we have to come to an end. It's your Sunday. Thank you so much for showing up on a Sunday, which is, I took away something of your play and regeneration time. So thank you for that. In the end, what would you say is one of the most important advice or secret learnings you could give to other female leaders who, or young professionals who would love to become female leaders? Starting with you, Gina.
Yeah, there is, I think, not that one golden bullet, but what I find quite often in conversations is that people don't know what they want, and really who they are and what they want and what they want to achieve. I think this is very important that you are starting that with that question, because only if you find yourself, if you know what you want, then you can also walk the way. Yeah, and I think that's one advice, to really reflect and say, okay, what is it what you would like to do?
Nadja, what is it for you?
Yeah, first of all, I really agree with what Gina says. It really starts with your own journey and understanding who you are and what you want. What I encounter when speaking to young female talents, I hear questions like, you know, okay, how should I say that to be, how should I, it's a lot about, you know, how am I perceived by others? And my advice to them is do not think so much about how you are perceived by others. With that being said, I don't mean, you know, don't be receptive to feedback, because you definitely need to be receptive to feedback. But if you are too self-conscious about how you are perceived and whatever you say, how it's judged, how I'm viewed and so on, then I think there's too much of a burden for young females to expand and develop. I think, you know, release yourselves from those external views.
What is very helpful in that is, I find it, radically accept yourself as you are in this moment. It helps really to go away from I need to be liked, I need to be appreciated, or I need to be hearing. And you still see this in management also. There's still this, you know, quality of I need to be liked, or may I have this different. But if in this moment, if you think about right now, I radically accept myself and the situation as it is, it helps you to anchor and be stronger in yourself and stop the comparing also, which is a danger if you want to have an impact as an individual. Nandani, what would you say as a closure?
Actually, something that builds on all of the last comments. I have come to learn the truth of that statement, that the most important impact on a situation is my inner state. Mm-hmm. The way I come into that situation will have an impact on the outcome. And so, yes, be prepared, do all the work up front, you know, be disciplined, but to make sure that I am centered, I believe, as Nadia said, that's the best thing.
Thank you so much. We are so right on time. Thank you so much joining from Orlando, from Munich, and from Casablanca. Thank you to Nadia, to Nandani, and to Gina. That was New Generation Women and Janine van Zenos. Wherever you are, dear audience, have a soulful, restful day, and hopefully see you soon again. Bye-bye.